With most ancient cultures, the best way to learn about how they lived is to first find out how they treated their dead. The Etruscans, a seafaring people who lived in what is now a southwestern section of modern-day Italy, left behind very little of how they lived thanks to the culture-assimilating nature of the Romans. Thus, today the most concrete traces of their existence, culture, way of life, and way of thinking are most apparent in their tombs. Their civilization has long since been lost to the passage of time. They could have sprung up fully formed from the earth for all modern scholars know about their origins. Predating the Romans in their region, they might have been a migrant people from the Aegean region, or possibly from as far away as northern Europe. Their name, Etruscans, isn't even their original appellation, rather one the Greeks gave them, meaning people of the towers, or the tower builders, possibly related to the fact that they might have lived in fortified towers built along cliffs and mountainsides. Their expansion across the Mediterranean was largely due to the richness of their mines, from which was produced massive amounts of copper and iron. These metals were used in the manufacture of weapons and in trading across the sea, but were also used to make the art that the Etruscans interred within their tombs and temples. I hadn't even realized that the Chimera of Arezzo, a bronze statue of the mythical many-headed foe of Bellerophon, was an Etruscan work, possibly the best known of all the art found in the region of Italy attributed to the Etruscans. The statue itself is extraordinary. Its half-stylized, half-realistic appearance gives it a legendary aspect. Looking at it, one can feel the muscles bunching beneath its motley hide as it prepares to spring. The goat head sprouting out of the Chimera's spine has a large wound in its neck. Along with its likely duty as a votive figure in a temple, it's suspected that the Chimera was part of a tableau set in the long-since ruined city of Arezzo, along with a statue of Bellerophon astride Pegasus. Looking at such works as this, it's easy to see the appreciation that the Etruscans had for different forms of art in their culture. The paintings decorating their grand tombs are similar to these scenes illustrating mythology. Along with showing legendary figures defeating divine monsters like the Chimera, the paintings show the favorite scenes of the life that has long since passed, as well as scenes that show that the Etruscans were optimistic of a pleasant afterlife. They're still resplendent in vivid color, with interesting touches such as a common checkerboard motif along the ceilings and walls, and stylized wild animals like leopards and birds sharing space with depictions of humans. Music and musical instruments are a strong motif in Etruscan art, from the stringed lyre to the tympanum to the double-shafted pipes of Pan or syrinx. It's easy to imagine a funeral in the tomb, the sputter and gutter of the torches lighting up the painted walls, making them almost seem to move, the wailing of paid lamenters, the eerie music made by these strange archaic instruments as the procession led the way out of the depths of the earth, the realm of the dead, to the hot, deep blue Italian night above ground. The paintings in Etruscan tombs remind me of those seen in ancient Egyptian tombs. They show scenes of gods and heroes. An example of a particularly interesting section of tomb painting is the sacrifice of the Trojan captives. It's part of the Francois tomb in central Italy, in the city of Volci. The tomb, dating back to the 4th century BCE, is lined in colorful painted frescoes, the passage of time not having yet managed to wear away the brilliant pigments and the geometric designs decorating the walls. Sacrifice of the Trojan captives shows a burial ceremony for the hero Patroclus, a Greek, during which the captives from the long, raging Trojan War were sacrificed. The blue figure in the middle is Charon, the grim ferryman who guides souls over the river Styx so they may be judged down in the underworld. It's interesting that this particular section of fresco shows an influence from Greek mythology and culture. The Etruscans weren't particularly friendly with their Greek neighbors, and even had a different set of gods, including Casa and Ursul, the dual deity representing the sun, Selvens, a god of civilization, and Turon, the love goddess. True, the Greek gods were eventually assimilated by the Etruscans under different names, but I find it particularly interesting that there was this level of globalization even amongst enemies. Perhaps the tales of Homer and the Greek myths were so widespread and well-liked that dueling cultures would put aside their animosity to feature their characters in their places of burial. As well as illustrating moments from myth and legend, the tomb paintings also serve to tell us modern archaeologists and historians about the daily, mundane lives of the mysterious Etruscans. In the tomb of the lioness, dated at around 520 BCE, a particular panel entitled Banqueter shows several interesting insights. The banqueter holds an egg aloft in front of him, denoting its importance. In the painting, it serves as central focus for the eye. The egg, a symbol of rebirth and renewal in several ancient cultures, and today, hence the tradition of hiding and decorating eggs during Easter, the springtime festival of renewal, is in Etruscan culture a potent allusion to the afterlife. It's a rather excellent motif to be decorating a tomb with. What person on their deathbed wouldn't want to surround themselves with symbols for the afterlife, where they believe they will soon be going? It would be a great comfort to the dying, even as their life inexorably waned. One of the other frescoes on the previously mentioned Tomb of the Lioness shows a phenomenon that seems to have been widespread amongst ancient cultures in the Mediterranean area. The painting of the boxers locked in combat shows the usage of differently colored pigments to denote gender. The figures are rather androgynous at first glance. All the people in the Etruscan tombs seem to have roughly the same facial features, but the colors with which they are painted show that they're meant to be male and female. The one on the right is painted in dark red, a color reserved for men, and the one on the left is yellow, the female color. The tradition of gender color differentiation dates back to the Egyptians, who rubbed their mummies in red or yellow pigments. It's a rather pragmatic practice, for a male mummy looks basically like a female one, same as the androgynous people on the tomb walls. It's also a very enduring practice, having been around since the Egyptians, a span of a few thousand years. It shows that useful art techniques take a long time to die, both in ancient times and in a more modern-day setting. It parallels the modern day in more than one way, too. We still have a dichotomy in colors, considered correct for different genders, though now it's a little different. Pink for girls, blue for boys. The desire to differentiate male from female must be a strong instinct in the human brain, even thousands of years ago. It's one of the many things that, despite the masses of time and history and morality changes and the vast evolution of culture and society, humans have always fundamentally been the same. It's rather interesting to note that the Etruscans decorated their tombs not with actual representations of the afterlife, but instead representations of beloved activities during life. The Etruscan culture seemed to have been very robust. They loved and idolized fighting, as is evidenced in the many paintings of boxers and combatants found on their walls. Their paintings are colored and lifelike, the figures not static and shown solely in profile, but rather alive and full of somewhat realistic movement and posture. Rather than seeking an early afterlife, they wanted to reflect on what the dead did when they were alive. It's not just looking forward to what happens in the afterlife, though this was an incredibly common theme in their art. It's remembering and honoring the people as they were when they were still alive. The Etruscans were a mysterious people. Only metal and stone and paint remains of their long-lost culture. However, what remains gives us future researchers some insight into how they worked. It's art more than anything that really shows us the heart of a culture. It really reflects its values, its morality, its soul. If an original Etruscan were alive today, I might be somewhat pleased at what remains to identify them with. Their gorgeous mythical bronzes showing the fiercest battles of the greatest heroes of that age, their curious, delicate jewelry, and, most of all, those careful monuments to the dead, the paintings decorating their tombs. It's with this culture, perhaps, that it rings truest of all, that most of what we know of their lives comes of how they treated their dead. If their lives were anything like the depictions on their tombs, they must have been great indeed.